Thanks for having us, and hopefully no complaints about the air miles on this stage right now. I used to live a 20-minute walk away, so maybe that could have been a more efficient way to get here. But again, yes, welcome. As Holly said, I've been around retail and data for about a decade now. And Peak as a business, as Rich said, was conceptualized about 8 years ago, which in the AI game is actually quite a long time. And through that time, we've learned quite a lot. We've learned about our industry and what it means to provide services to you as businesses, but ultimately we've learned about your industry, your challenges, and how you've gone about adopting artificial intelligence and really putting it to work. We realized that there's probably something we could do with that knowledge. We could package it up, add some insight, and provide it back to you, give a little bit of value, a little bit of direction. And that is what we are going to talk about today. What you're meant to be seeing on behind you right now, and I asked for a comedy check size style report, is a picture of the report that Arun filled out to mark himself as a leader in AI against those in his industry in the UK, in the US, and in India. Now, imagine, if you will, a graph that goes to the top right. On the x-axis is time. It always is. And on the y-axis is value. And it's flying to the top right. That is AI. That's how you get to being an expert, a master in AI. But we all know that it's not as straightforward as that, right? We know that although this might be a comforting thought, it's a bumpy road. There are ups and there are downs. People leave your business. People come into your business. You have skeptics and you have champions. It really fails to capture that nuance. So we decided to do something about it. We wanted to provide you a guide to get you from bottom left all the way to top right, to enjoy the bumps, the highs, the lows along the way. And that's Peak's AI Benchmarking Index. We developed it in partnership with our friends at the Center for Economics and Business Research, and it's based on an international survey of over 3,000 business leaders. It recognizes an industry's success, and then it gives you the opportunity to feed into where you match up in an objective and realistic perspective so that you can take that into your business and have discussions with the execs and ultimately with those on the ground who are putting AI into work. There are 5 key pillars, and we're going to talk through each of those pillars today. They are decision-making, strategy, data and technology, people and processes, value and management. I'm delighted to welcome Arun here. It's been a genuine pleasure getting to know you and about the fertilizers industry primarily, but also obviously the petrochemicals in your background. We're going to talk through with Arun about his experience with benchmarking today, but this is the twist. And I'm fingers crossed that the far more technical and complex action we're about to try and undertake is working. You were told this was a panel, not just 2 people having a chat on a stage. So if you look around you, to your left, to your right, you'll notice you are all now part of the panel. If you could take out the application for today, or scan your QR code on your lanyard, and it will pop up in your browser. You hit the top 3 lines on the left there, and you will see a side nav on the left. Scroll down, it might just be below the page break, and there is AI benchmarking poll. Sweet Lord, tell me it's there. Yes. Amazing. Now, there we go. So what we're going to do is start off with a little practice question, right? I'll get Arun to answer, and then as we go through, I'll invite some more audience participation. Get used to it, understand that functionality. I'll give you a moment, but let's go for it. Arun, again, thank you, Holly, for the very warm welcome. Pretty straightforward, this question. How many times has your organization launched a digital transformation project over the past 5 years?
So, good evening, friends. As I start, I would like to firstly extend a warm welcome. I would say namaste from India. And while I look at this subject, for us, it has been an exciting intervention that we've gone through, and I'm sure that I will have more to share. As far as the number of interventions, I think there have been sporadic interventions that we looked at. There are different business teams. So like Milo mentioned, we have a fertilizers part of the business. We have the mining chemicals. We are into industrial chemicals, and we also have a retail business. So there is a diverse set of business streams at the very end. And there are intellectuals who possibly are influenced by others. So you have people who just come and say, well, let's do something new. And that's how a lot of these interventions have actually shaped. So we had a good, if I would say, numbers at our end as well have been 3 to 5 in the last 2 odd years. And that's something that has been not very, very planned, but yes, it got triggered and we've done some of this.
I appreciate that. And in your role, of course, you're constantly trying to coordinate across all of those business units. The global average is actually 8.5. So these are some very busy digital transformers. As you can see, so we've got like a nice pocket of responses there in the 3 to 5 times. And actually, again, according to Peak Survey in collaboration with CEBR, the success rate is around 69%. So people are taking shots, people are taking quite a number of shots, but they're not always landing. This is broadly how the tech will go and how the conversation will roll out. And as we get into these further pillars, hopefully I'll get some audience engagement and ask you to raise your hand and join in with us too. The second pillar and the second question you'll now see in front of you, and I wanted to give Arun the opportunity to answer this question first. Also maybe perhaps touch on just the scale of the organization you're a part of in Deepak. Pretty straightforward. Does your organization currently have an AI strategy?
Okay, wonderful. So firstly, I will start with the fact that, what is the magnitude at which we operate. So firstly, we are over $1 billion company, and we largely focus on the Indian geography. And given we have a B2C business, which is the fertilizers business. And like you would know, India is a large country. And India has close to 150 million farmers. And when you look at trying to sell to this big audience, it's important to somewhere feel humbled that it is a big task, and there are so many other players also in the marketplace, and that's where a lot of information about who is your customer, how does he use products. So it is dependent on multiple factors. It depends on the land holding. India has been a country that has had farmers in a part of our southern and the eastern geographies which are having very, very small land holdings, less than an acre. And there are farmers in the northern part of India which possibly are a little more affluent and having bigger land holdings. So it's land holding, it's the weather out there, it's the soil condition, it's also the government support prices. So a lot of times the crop that's grown in the farm is based on how the governments have supported with a particular price at which they will procure the crop. So there are multiple, conditions that decide how the farmer is going to grow his crop. And automatically linked to that is how is he going to use his inputs. So one of the input that we supply is the fertilizer. We also supply micronutrients. We supply specialty fertilizer, which is typically used as water soluble. So both of these are very, very conditional to how the farmer is planning to grow and what is the acreage. So this is quite a complex piece, and when I'm now extending my thoughts to a B2B business, we are into the mining chemicals. So we supply large chunks of our products to big government PSUs, public sector companies, where there is a significant tender process. So you have tenders that you automatically look at, small margins at times, big volumes. It is, again, quite competitive because there is a significant amount of imports that happens in this particular part of the business. So trying to look at how demand shaping happens, because it's very price sensitive. And a lot of times these are prices like now, if you look at the conditions that we are in, we saw about a year and a half back the Ukraine war, and that's the time when you had a serious challenge with Russia dumping in a lot of ammonium nitrate in the country, and that's where your business is automatically, somewhere in some way influenced by it. And today you have Israel and the war there, which automatically impacts the prices of crude. So each of these influences automatically, in some way, work against or for the product that we sell. And we have industrial chemicals, which is essentially acids and solvents, again driven by chemistries which are imported to a good extent in the country, and therefore commodity prices are automatically the ones that we are closely watching around.
Yeah,
so when you look at strategy in terms of AI strategy, I think this is a subject that we feel will possibly power us, but we don't have an AI strategy at the moment. We are basically feeling that this is one thing that does not therefore need to be sporadic. And as I mentioned in my earlier example, that we've been trying to take a pot shot at one topic here, one topic there. None of us has been in sync, and it's now that we realize that it is important that you have now an AI strategy, which is actually talking about data and the power of data, because there are so many points of data that are then interconnected. And we have assets, which is the manufacturing assets, which automatically don't service one business, but is some way servicing multiple businesses. And one of the ways that we leverage our assets is by margin maximization. We say the product that makes the most margin will get manufactured.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of interconnect, and that's where today a data strategy is automatically now getting more and more relevant.
Yeah.
And that's where I would say that the AI strategy is something that we are in discussion, and we feel strongly connected to this topic.
It builds, yeah. And I think the sheer complexity of the business you're operating in, if you're not deeply considering your strategies in a calculated and logical manner, the bullwhip of those supply chain incidents, or even to make this a little bit more contextual, the team were over meeting yourself and the CEO only a couple of weeks ago, and honestly the best excuse I've ever had for a cancelled meeting is, sorry, we've got to go and see President Modi. He's just called, literally just called. So you're right in at the heart of what is motivating the Indian economy, and you're thinking things through logically and thoughtfully. I wanted to tie it in with a question that we've asked the audience here on how well mapped and formalized your commercial decisions are. We have landed in the largest portion. In some commercial decisions are formalized, although most aren't. I would like to open it to the audience. If anyone would like to raise a hand to reveal that they were part of that group, to maybe compare and contrast with Arun's answer, which he knows in his head and I've got written on my iPad. Anyone? Go on. Oh, this is kind of how this whole talk works. It's kind of the shtick. If this doesn't happen, then we've got a problem. Oh, okay, well, we'll come back to that. Oh, no, just the camera. Right, we'll come back to that one. Arun, tell us a little bit. Like, what does it mean? We heard Simon Spavand obviously talk about it in the supply chain conversation. What does it mean to you to say that your organizations are formalized and mapped? And yeah, tell us a little bit more about why you're outperforming the mode.
And I actually would pull on some of the conversation we had earlier, and where one of the questions that automatically pops up is ROI. And you normally look at every decision that goes through this stage gate of why do we need to do it? What's the benefit that's going to be like? And typically, there are a lot of qualitative benefits, but typically quantitative benefits are the ones that automatically make the cut when you're looking at budgets also getting constrained. I believe most of the decisions have seen triggers that are linked to money, and this is the ROI that makes the cut. But I think slowly that is an area where we're also realizing that there are certain capabilities, and which is very critical, and when I look at connecting it with strategy and the sporadic nature. So what we looked at is that there are some fundamental pieces that would be critical for organizations of our size to have. One of them is the enterprise solution. So when you look at an enterprise solution, we have SAP S/4HANA. And we invested in HANA among the first few in the country, feeling that that would be a fundamental shift, and it would be very critical to have a very strong foundation. And similarly, we looked at planning. Planning is again a very critical capability, and I heard from again some colleagues, I think Kelly, who was talking about IBP, the integrated business planning. So we invested in Anaplan. Again, a Gartner Magic Quadrant solution where we felt that this was going to be again fundamentally critical for us to connect the value chain. That is getting the demand to production, to procurement, to dispatch, the entire value chain that finally sees the delivery to the customer. So getting into some fundamental pieces was very critical. So when I look at, we therefore decided that it was not only about ROI, but also being convinced that there are fundamental shifts that you need to do, because that's where you will actually say more and more competitive. And here again comes the AI strategy. And today we was possibly at the cusp where this is making a little more sense, and where we feel that with the kind of, I would say that I come from a country where technology has seen a sea change, and if I look at just examples, today mobile penetration in India is a good 95+%, and typically rural India is actually seen use of mobile telephony, the use of UPI, or the unified payment interface, again is something that's penetrated to an extent of 60+%. So as a country, adoption of some of these are now very, very relevant. And in such a changing environment, trying to ignore data, and where data is now going to be easily available in some form and shape, it was critical that we look at this piece too. And I think, honestly, we're working on that.
100%. And I think that we've got some nice loops back in, not like we planned this at all, with conversations we have with our friends from Fuzzy Labs and Matillion, right? Software is eating the world. Literally, you're seeing it in front of you. I've loved every visit I've had out to you in Mumbai and Pune. When I may have bought a knockoff Hardik Pandya India shirt outside the stadium on UPI, I was like, surely you're taking cash. There's nothing in this transaction that should be happening right now. And he's like, no, scan this payment button, which shocked me. And they're your customers as well, though, right? You've got 95% mobile penetration. Farmers live in rural areas using these payment frameworks. So it's fascinating how all that connects. And then your own processes, which may have been word of mouth, which may have been written down, which may have been in spreadsheets, are being eaten by Anaplan, SAP, and you can guess Peak might be a part of that too. What we're going to do is we're going to jump to the next question. It's the strategy question. I'll let you answer that yourselves. It'll be interesting to see those responses. Perhaps we can find some familiarity in that we don't all have an AI strategy right now. And we'll just flash that one up to see how that one plays out. But I want to move on to something that's perhaps a little bit more black and white, maybe give some room for engagement, a little bit of an easier question. Data and technology will be the following questions. How are we doing on strategy? Yeah, so 50% isolated in departments, exactly. As kind of Arun was saying, you have various business units that are then taking their own protocol. Maybe their pressing needs are ahead of those, or maybe you have a leader in that organization that's willing to drive that change and take the risk. But appreciate your responses, and thanks again for filling out the poll. This is all highly, highly valuable. Let's go to the data question. Again, I said a little bit more black and white here. So the data technology pillar captures a current state of an organization's infrastructure, hardware, software, data, you name it. It benchmarks the kind of data that you're creating as well as collecting, transforming, and storing. There, obviously, it touches as well on security and other elements that are important, especially if you're handling customers' data. I'm interested. I'll ask this question first to Arun, and then I'm going to turn it back to you guys, and maybe a Peak person in a moustache can stand up. Is your data currently organized in a formal data warehouse or storage system?
Okay. So, like I mentioned, today some of the foundational pieces like SAP, Anaplan, there is a very structured thought happening towards trying to mobilize data as one source of data. So very critically looking at dashboards, empowered through SAP, Anaplan. So there is already talk that we have on a data lake, and essentially trying to look at the power of Power BI as one mode of displaying data. So there is work on data lake where we see everything. There are so many data interfaces that we have, which is customer specific, transaction specific, manufacturing specific. So all of this is somewhere getting pulled into a data lake where the visualization of that is an area where we looked at Power BI to help us. And we actually are trying to get our teams motivated to say that how that will help you decision in your decision making, and making it a lot more fun. And that's something that's happening. But yeah, it is in a slow simmer.
It's a journey, huh?
Yeah, it's a journey for sure.
You would have seen the graph, it goes to the top right, but it's wiggling along the way. Yeah. And it sounds like there's a lot of jobs for a very busy VP of business and strategy transformation. Here we go. I'm going to try it one more time. And I want to flip it because it's maybe a little bit of a positive outcome. Does your organization currently have a formalized data storage system, e.g. data lakes / data warehouses? I'm going to go for it. No, but we would like to establish one. Anyone want to join that conversation? Snowflake are here. They're happy to have a conversation. Okay, I was going to ask a very friendly question of why you'd want to do that. But kind of Arun's already given us that answer. And I think it obviously goes to the point you made around empowering your teams, right, to make decisions at the edge without having to go to internal systems, without having to go to IT or BI and request that. Those people on the front line are your experts. So how can you put that information into their hands to make better decisions? Had an interesting conversation yesterday, actually.
If I can just interrupt, Milo. So today, one of the things that we realize and we live in is a term that is pretty much used, and it's quite an old term now, called the VUCA. And I'm sure that you all have heard about the VUCA world, that is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this is something that is playing out much more clearly than ever, because as things try to stabilize, you have something that destabilizes it. And we also live in a global village, so currencies are impacted. We look at input materials. So we are in the manufacturing industry, and we see a lot of input materials getting impacted. And this is a time where we have the sales and operations planning process, which is planning for a month. We do it as a monthly exercise, and we say that, well, we have the next month, which is firm, and the next 2 months, which is rolling. So we have a 3-month plan. But then it changes, and it is now changing so dynamically that we say that the plan really didn't make sense. But what is important here is that that is the reality. And that's precisely a place that you can't ignore, that your ability as an organization to help the teams that are in the rut, in the mess, to be able to make wiser decisions and be able to try and intellectually glean out something that possibly they wouldn't have obviously seen. And that's precisely an area where we feel that getting them empowered to be agile in their decision making, in terms of scenario planning, in terms of our ability to tell them that these could be the possibilities.
Yep.
And then you at least give them something to chew on to finally make their own decisions, obviously. But this is a capability that is going to be very critical, and I find that will be the place that we will see most of us in some time, and we would not be able to ignore that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that leads on where you mentioned a few times as it came through in your answer, and I know you're very passionate about this, especially when you're onboarding new team members, or you're working with people in different business units, as naturally your role entails, is the people and the process that are kind of the most interesting part of it all, right? I'm interested in it will be the next question in the app for all of you as well. We want to know what types of roles and teams your organization has in order to drive this kind of level of adoption. I remember we spoke briefly about a kind of a great myth that kind of brought this to life really well. And I'd just be interested to compare your answers to the data that we gather from the room here.
Right. Well, that was a provoking one, because I happened to have a conversation and he leveraged on that. So, well, India is again a country where we're very traditional, and there is a lot of mythology. And I don't know if you would have heard about stories like the Ramayana, Mahabharata. I don't know how many of you have heard about Ram and the Ramayana as a story. So this is basically an epic. So it's just like the fairy tales that you would hear. So as we grew up, we were told stories by our grandmothers and elders, which actually were trying to imbibe virtues of something that was good and not so good. So one of the story which was possibly some place where I was trying to connect, and I shared with him, was about this is about Mahabharata. And scientifically also we see that there is proof of this happening somewhere in 3000 BC. So this is about two brothers, in fact cousins, who finally have a fight on the ownership for land. And this is quite a common thing, right, everywhere. So you have then the story where it is between good and evil. And but there's one place where the two armies are mustering support. Like, who's behind me? Who's behind me? What is the kind of people who will support? So they go to this wise man who we call as Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna has got a huge army with him, with a lot of weapons, like we say, the missiles and other things, that he has. And so these two brothers, the cousins, actually go to him to seek help. And that is the time where, he says that, well, both of you are important to me, you're brothers to me. So I can give you choices. And one of the choices, I will go with one of you. It's only me. It's only me who will come and be part of one team. And the rest of my army, my missiles and everything will be part of the other's side. So you choose and let me know what is your choice. So the good side of things chooses Krishna. We want you to be along with us. So the other side felt, wow, this is half the battle won. And that is the place where it makes the difference. And as the story goes by, this is the part which actually turns the whole tide aside, and where you look at Krishna becoming the guide for the war that is fought and won by this team. And why did I share about this story? You see, somewhere the analogy that I'm trying to drive here is about possibly this was AI. It was not Krishna. He knew it all, and in fact, there is a big, scripture called the Bhagavad Gita, which is talking about the knowledge and the concept of how do you do, how is virtues for how do you transact with people, how do you do business, how do you do, what exactly is the way that you actually handle self. And that is the place where Krishna actually, gives you the right side of things. So he's your conscious keeper. Mm. I would only try to compare the story with the fact that, well, that was possibly then, but possibly this is the conscious keeper that we are trying to find in AI, because that's the data that possibly is getting churned without passion or without color, without bias, is somewhere trying to tell you, well, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So I thought possibly this analogy helped. Now, coming back to the fact that people and processes, so...
I mean, it makes sense to me, right? You've got one of the things that you've, as we've discussed over our kind of year or so of working together now, is you're looking for those leaders, you're looking for those guides in your organization. You can see from the answers here that the teams are diverse. The teams will always be diverse because of the diversity and skill sets that are required to make it happen, right? And that could be from sales to marketing to supply chain and everything in between, even finance and legal, and making sure everything adds up. But if you have that all-seeing kind of guide and wisdom on your side, then it's about getting those teams to play nice and play together.
So possibly the only one part which I tried to emphasize in the story was about the unbiasedness, the fact that you possibly will have to look at the data from without the filter. Because that's when it makes sense. Because otherwise, you look at it from a salesman's point of view, he sees it in his way. You look at it from a supply chainer's eyes, he has it from a different way. So it would be critical that you look at data in a way that it is unbiased, and then you're automatically trying to figure out, so what does it speak, and how does it, actually, tell you the message. So I would believe that that is one part that would be very critical for any company in terms of people and processes. One is about trying to tell them that it is relevant. It is going to be the thing that will help you do things better. But we should also look at a team that is able to look at this data in a manner that is unbiased.
For sure. And I think this is something that I mean, all of us who've worked with Deepak have noticed, that there's a real ability to step back and assess things objectively on what is very realistically and subjectively a lot of change for people, right? But I guess to kind of work this one through on kind of a final question before we get into closing remarks. As we go to this next question, I'm hoping that there's a positive answer on the board. How much of a role do you think AI will, and this is, but it is specific, will play in achieving your business objectives in the next 5 years?
So I have an answer before they answer.
I mean, anyone? I think you will be. Yeah.
Okay. So I would, at the moment, still feel that it's a journey to be taken. But for sure, it is going to be an exciting one, because we're also trying to look at it from a very positive lens, that data. So I heard from others, who were sharing about people who are doing the same business and same roles for 20 plus years, maybe more, trying to say that, well, we know it all. And it is the same story here as well. So we will have this as a topic, that how much of this will actually make sense. So we're working on 3 applications with Peak, and two of them are actually about inventory, and one is about price elasticity. So all of these are places which are currently, you can say, led by teams which are very experienced and have been doing it for a long time. So we see that one of them has fructified in terms of an application which is now in a live mode, and it is already giving people a sense of, whoa, wow, this is something that seems to give me some insights better than what I would possibly do, because we ended up with a huge decap value, which was like we were not utilizing these assets for the last maybe 5+ years, and we now feel that, well, it needed a relook. So I would say that, as far as what I would say will happen in the next couple of years, we're slowly seeing that, the shift will happen.
Yeah.
And there will be more examples that will give us more confidence, because when we started, it was like the leap of faith. We really didn't know the product. It's like that today, and I was sharing this again with someone, that today when you want to eat something, we go through the filter, which is the eyes. So you want to, it looks nice, and I would want to eat it. Then it smells good, so I would want to eat it. And then you finally eat it. So we live in a world which has tangibility. So we would like to have the look, feel, and then we say, oh, now it makes sense. So in a world that we've grown, the product that we talk about from an AI angle is something that is not tangible. You can't see it when you actually say, well, Peak, why don't you come on board and work with us? So Peak has nothing to show. So it's a matter of the leap of faith. And you say, well, it's going to make sense. It's actually something that is going to be an exciting journey. And that conviction is very critical. And I think the first application was on the hooks, like, oh, it's going to be with them, without them, we say bye. So now with one turnaround, you automatically get a little more confident. You feel that the water is warm. It's nice.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's very complex what's going on. I mean, and there's probably more PhDs in this room than anywhere else in the UK right now, and that's really hard to explain and visualize, right? When you're dealing with such vast amounts of data, when what was a spreadsheet has been made infinitely more complex for the use of AI, but ultimately far more productive. It's a real journey to go on to understand exactly how that maths and those algorithms are doing what they're doing.
again, Milo, sorry.
No, I appreciate the patience.
So this is again a place where I grew up with a lot of stories. And incidentally, my dad was a professor, and he would look at teaching people with a lot of illustrations. And this is also the story which I feel relevant, is that we would have heard the king's new clothes or the emperor's new clothes. So the story of the emperor's new clothes. So sometimes you, having heard that, you actually think, am I the emperor out here? Are the clothes really happening? Is it something that's woven in gold, but I'm not able to see it? So this is the little bit of the jitter that happens when you are actually in the process of getting associated with a solution, which is an AI solution. And it's about the journey that you have to actually go through. And then I'm sure that it makes sense.
Yeah, when you can finally see it. when those cash registers start ringing. The good news is you're not alone. So we have a significant proportion of the room here agreeing with you, as I can see from your report right here, that it will play a major role in achieving your business's objectives. I think one of the things that we've discussed, and I think a lot of the businesses in the room today have in common, is you're in a relatively consolidated industry. Of course, there's a long tail of smaller providers locally, but if you can make that meaningful percentage change against your competitors, the acceleration and the compounding that you get above that is significant. So for those that are playing a major role, we're here for you. You can do the report. For those that are playing a moderate role or even want to understand why it's be a minor role, again, jump in, take the report, see how it goes. I know we start a little bit early, so we're going to finish a little bit early, which means we can then get to the bar a little bit earlier. That's efficiency. So I just wanted to have some closing remarks here on what today was all about, really. Oh my God, it's there. That's what you're going to get. What have we learned, right? So 5 key areas businesses need to work on to successfully develop as an AI organization: decision-making, strategy, data and technology, people and processes, value and measurement. It can seem daunting, but doing the survey, getting your name on the index isn't about being the highest scorer first time. It's about getting an honest view of where you are so that you can have a productive and genuinely real conversation with those around you. It gives you a baseline, and it allows you to see kind of what the upside is and ultimately where your growth can come from. If, of course, you would like to receive your own copy of the report or the survey, get in touch with your account manager. You'll know who they are. They're all the very friendly, smiley faces in the room today. But I just wanted to say, on behalf of everyone, a heartfelt thank you to you, Arun, for making the trip from Pune and joining us both for kind of the week, but also the session today. I know you are off on a very exciting tour of Britain that I'm actually quite jealous of. So you should definitely enjoy that. But again, and thank you to all of those who responded to the survey and were involved throughout. Appreciate it, and look forward to meeting you later.
Thank you.